Hello everyone, and welcome to this session that we're having this morning with Traysiah Spring on Ayurvedic Astrology, or Jyotish it's also called. I'm really pleased you can all be here, and for those people that are going to watch it later, I'm pleased that you're going to be able to watch it later and get just as much out of it, which is fabulous. I'm so happy to have Traysi here this morning to talk through with us Ayurvedic astrology, to introduce it to us. I've known Traysi for several years now, quite a while, and I've had quite a few readings with her as well, which has been really wonderful. Traysi is qualified in Ayurveda as well, so she's an Ayurvedic practitioner as well, a therapist. She's also been doing studied transcendental meditation. That's where her meditation originated, I think. Is it, Traysi?
That's correct.
So she did TM with my very good friend and mentor, Deborah Poneman. She was in there at the same time with Maharishi, which, you know, gave them such a strong lineage of Ayurveda and meditation. And she's been doing Jyotish for, I'm not sure how long, actually, Traysi.
I was counting today, and I think it's about 30 years.
Oh, my heavens. That's a long time, isn't it? So she's been doing Jyotish for about 30 years. And she's got a really great knowledge of Ayurveda, meditation, all things that we've been looking at and studying. So, and of course, the Jyotish. So I'd like to introduce and welcome Traysi. And Traysi, if there's anything that I've missed out, can you please add it in for me? Because I didn't really cover your bio really well. So add it in if there's things that that you'd like to share as well. So welcome, Traysi. I'm so pleased you're here with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Robyn, and thank you everybody else from Australia. I'm on the other side of the world. I'm coming from Washington State in the United States. So hello, everybody. So great to see everybody. And thank you, Robyn, for having me today. I just love Robyn. She's one of my favorite people. We met through Deborah Poneman, through courses with Deborah Poneman, a wonderful spiritual leader, as well as through Deepak Chopra's place. We're both instructors with Deepak Chopra, and we also have that connection. So it's just wonderful to be here today talking about one of my favorite subjects, Jyotish astrology. We say Jyotish, and I understand you say Jyotish. Is that right? So
yeah,
the Australian way to say it. That's kind of cool. I like that.
I'm happy to be initiated further though, Traysi. So Jyotish is fine with me.
Okay. Well, Jyotish astrology comes from the same background, the same lineage as Ayurveda. It's the same beginnings. It comes from that ancient Vedic literature that is thousands of years old, that has been passed down from teacher to student, and from teacher to student for thousands of years. And then it was finally written down. So it's a very ancient wisdom, just like Ayurveda. It's actually considered really adjacent to Ayurveda, kind of goes along with it. And it is really a way to get an overview of your life. So I have a little slideshow. Would that be helpful today to have some points and slides, or do we want to just have a really easy discussion? What would you prefer, Robyn?
I think that we might, I might just ask you a couple of questions and then we'll go into the slides. I think that'd be fabulous. That'd
okay.
be really good. I think the slides will be good because what you've told me about them, I think they'll be a really great thing to do. Okay, so you did just mention, we just did, starting this course, we did look at, you know, the history of Ayurveda and tapping into that whole Vedic wisdom. And as you mentioned, Jyotish is that same, or Jyotish is that same Vedic wisdom that is always available. So can you just tell us a little bit, and you just touched on it there a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about what Jyotish is and what we'd find out from looking into our own Jyotish charts. Like, could you just tell us a little bit about that? So what it
Yes.
is,
So
why we have it done.
Right. Well, Jyotish is really, it's looking at the stars and seeing the story of our life that is written on the stars. So it's at the moment of our birth, if you were to look up into the sky and see the exact placement of stars and planets in the sky at that moment, that creates a map in the stars that describes your whole life. And it's this kind of a miraculous, magical thing when you think about that. But somehow these great seers from thousands of years ago, these great, very wise, enlightened seers, looked up into the stars and had these cognitions or understandings of what the different positions of stars and planets meant for us, how they related to us. And so at the moment of our birth, that whole story of our life is embedded in that map. And so when you look at somebody's birth chart, if you understand how to speak star language, speak the language that the stars are trying to speak to us from, then we can understand. It tells about our personality traits, our body traits, our tendencies in our life, the different time periods that we're going to be going through different things. It has so many details, and if we understand how to read it, then we can get a really good overview of our life. And what I find the really helpful thing about that is that you can step back from what's going on in your day-to-day existence, because we tend to get kind of, a little bit, narrow in our scope when we just kind of are living our individual life and just doing our day-to-day thing. Astrology helps us to go like this for a moment and to help us to understand from this broader perspective. Oh, I was supposed to go through this at this time, and I was supposed to go through this challenge, and it's supposed to help me to learn this. And when we step back and we can look at our life from that broader perspective, then by having that deeper, more higher understanding of what we're doing in our life, then it's like we don't take it as personally. It's not as upsetting. We can say, oh no, it's supposed to unfold this way.
Yeah.
And
it really is about the way our life is supposed to unfold, isn't it, Traysi? It's about giving us a bit of a map, but it's not about predicting things, is it? Or, saying, well, now you're going to meet this person, or so how is that different? Or, how would you explain that?
That's a very good point, Robyn, because I think from how I understand it, there are certain points in our life that are kind of pre-organized. In my training, the teachers that I was trained by, which said that we chose everything that we were going to go through, the challenges and lessons we were going to go through into our life before we came down into this life. We chose it all in the spirit world before coming into these bodies and personalities. And then we forgot that we chose it, so that we would have the full experience of going through it. So, but you would wonder why would I choose certain things in my life? Well, the whole purpose of it all is that we are learning these deeper soul lessons and going through these deeper challenges to learn and grow on this soul level.
That's great.
And so I don't look at, so I look at the chart from that perspective. What is our soul purpose? What are we here to learn about? What are the lessons we're here to learn about? At what timing in our life? But I don't really, some astrologers look at predictions, but I don't, in my experience, predictions aren't that accurate, because we also have free will within this whole thing. There are certain points and things we're set to go through, but we have free will. We can, maybe are resisting something and not wanting to go through it. So it'll come back to us again and again and again until we decide to finally, okay, I'm going to go face this and I'm going to do it. But we have the free will of saying, okay, I'm going to do this or not, or make different choices as we go along within that framework of the things that are supposed to unfold in our life. So we can't really necessarily predict exactly what's going to happen because we're making different choices all the time. And that changes the future all the time. Every choice we make changes how the future is going to unfold. So making a prediction, we can make, we can look at the chart and see what are the tendencies at this time, what's going to be supported at this time, what time period are you going through. But I don't like to be too specific with predictions because that also limits it. It narrows it down. Oh, that's the only possibility. I don't believe that. I think all possibilities are possible at any time. So the choices we make can change the possibilities.
Perfect. Thank you, Traysi. Well, I think that's a really good introduction, and I think we can look at your slides now. What do you think?
Right.
Yeah. So if you just share your screen.
Let's share a screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So can everyone see Traysi's screen now? Just give me a thumbs up. Yes. Perfect. Good, good, good.
Wonderful. So I like to call this your story in the stars. Mm-hmm. What is your story that is written in the stars? So I've already kind of talked a little bit about, we were saying this, that at the moment of your birth, that's when you get that map of the story of your life. And I like to look at the chart from the deeper soul perspective. Because I think in the chart, what we can really see clearly and objectively is the lessons that we're here to learn, the challenges we came to overcome, and the gifts and talents we came with to share with others and to use to serve others. So those are very clear in the chart. And those are the things that I like to look at because I feel like when we have a real grasp of that, then we have this broader perspective of, okay, I'm here to do that, and I might be doing this right now, but the broader perspective of it is that so I can feel good about whatever I'm going through.
Can we just
and then, of course, there is, what is our soul? Sorry about that. Sorry.
Can we just pause there for a minute? I love those three, Traysi.
Sure.
Yeah, so what lessons we're here to learn. I think that's, something that we wonder what this is the things that are happening for us, not to us. What lessons we're here to learn, what challenges we came to overcome. So that's, the choices that we set up at the beginning. What did we say that, we wanted to actually heal in this lifetime? And then what gifts and talents we came with to share and to serve. That's all about the first birthright, isn't it? Our Dharma. So why are we here? What gifts and talents have we got that we can use to help and serve others? I think that's amazing. So to give that soul perspective, I just love that. Sorry, you can keep going. I just really wanted to highlight it because I thought it was so good.
Thank you, Robyn. And when we know these basic things of our life, it really, I find, is helpful. Mm-hmm. And along with what is our soul purpose? That, of course, is very important as well. And from what I understand is that we fundamentally all have the same soul purpose, and that's to learn and grow as a soul, as what we were saying earlier. Mm-hmm. And why? To expand to higher levels of awareness, higher levels of consciousness, to grow and expand, so that we are a better version of ourselves than when we were first born. So to learn and grow within that. And that is everybody's purpose, is that. As a human being coming down to this earth, everybody has that purpose. But then so then we go through, how do we grow as a soul? By going through the lessons and the challenges. It's like an obstacle course on earth. It's hard and it's difficult, and we have to get over the wall, and we have to jump over the ditch, and it's not to torture us, it's to strengthen us and to test us so that we're much stronger and much braver and clearer about who we are by the end of it. So that's how I look at it. And We already talked about that part. And it also, when we think in terms of, okay, I chose my life before I came here, this implies that we are never a victim in our life. And this might feel like, wait a second, this happened to me, this happened to me. But if we chose it, then the implications are that we are powerful manifestors, that we have created and set up a life that we can best learn and grow the most for our soul in this lifetime. So it's an empowering feeling, I find, when I think of it in those terms. But then everybody has that same life purpose, but then we each have our own individual life purpose as well. We each have our own journey, our own challenges and lessons that we came to overcome, our own pathway through it all. And that's what astrology can show us, is our own journey while we're here. And we were just talking about this, we learn to speak the star language to understand it. And what does that mean? We look at the different aspects of astrology, and we understand all the different aspects and how they interrelate. And that's how we read a chart. So there are 3 main aspects to an astrology chart. There are the houses. There's 12 houses. Each house represents a different part of our life. There are 12 signs. We are familiar with those. It's the Aries, Taurus, Gemini, all of those are zodiac signs, and they're actual constellations of stars that you can see in the sky. They're real things that are moving through the sky. And each one of those represents a different perspective on life or a different personality trait. And then that creates the backdrop for the planets, which are much closer than the stars. And so they transit in front of the stars. And there are 9 planets, and each planet has its own qualities and energies. And it's how all of these different elements interact. Each one of these has a different energy vibrating. How does the house energy vibrate with the sign energy and then vibrate with the planet energy? And how do we put that all together? And each person's chart is like this giant energy soup, and everybody's chart is as unique to them as their fingerprint. So it's your own energy soup that you got going on in your chart.
Wow, that is amazing, Traysi. That is so incredible. And I find it amazing when I have my Jyotish done to look at what's going on, and it's one of those things where you feel like you just want to know more. You really look for more guidance, or tell me more about myself. It's learning about yourself, isn't it, through the chart? Yeah.
Everybody loves to hear about themselves.
We do.
It's universal. Because I think the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand the world, the more we understand the universe. So it is our way into understanding everything when we understand ourselves better. So now, do we want to get into a little more detail on the houses, the planets and things, just a little bit more, or do you want to just kind of go look at a chart now? What would you like?
Okay. Tell me, everybody, do you want a little bit more details, or do you want to look at a chart? Tell me in the chat box. What would you like to do?
We can just give a quick overview of some of the houses, some of the signs, some of the planets, so you get a taste of it. And then we can look at how you go about reading a chart. Does that sound good?
Yeah. We've got the detail. We've got more detail coming in here. Okay. I think so too, because I like to know about the houses, and more detail, definitely more detail. Jackie, Traysi, let's do that.
Okay, good. Here we go, guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so the houses. What does this mean? So the sky is divided into 12 sections like pieces of pie. This is what the houses are. So let's say this is the earth in the center, and then all around it, it's cut into pieces like pie, pieces of pie all the way around it. Like in this diagram, you can see the earth in the middle, and then these are the different houses that are these sections that the sky has been cut into. And each piece of that pie, each section represents a part of our life. And this is a structure that stays still. It stays still in the sky, and then the stars and the planets transit through the different houses. So this is the one element of the chart that stays the same.
So could you just run through what those houses are? Are you going to do that, Traysi?
Yes.
Oh, God bless you. Perfect.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, for example, the first house represents your personality, your body, what the world sees when you walk in the room. It is the me aspect of the chart. It's very personal. It's also where the rising sign can be found. The second house is the house of money, food, and speech. The third house represents the arts and enthusiasm for life. The fourth house is your home and luxuries. And this is Vedic astrology, not Western. This is going to be different than Western astrology. So just so you know that it is slightly a different setup for it. So we're doing Vedic astrology today. So the fifth house then, children, dating, investments. Sixth house, health, daily work, enemies. Seventh house is partnership. This is a very important house. It's how we tell about your marriage, how your marriage is going to go. Are you going to have challenges in your marriage? Also in business relationships. Eighth house is the esoteric house. It's kind of the otherworldly house, where there's the material world, but then there's the other world, and this house is all about that. It's also about death, your death, but also the death of the material for gain of the more etheric. Ninth house is the house of God or spirituality. The 10th house is the house of career. So you can tell a lot about what somebody is going to be doing in their life from that house. The 11th house is the house of gain, income, and manifestation. It's how you create in your life. 12th house is the house of enlightenment, and it's also the house of debt. I think of it as loss of the material world for gain of the spiritual. So those are the 12 different houses and what they represent. So what you do is you're looking, let's look at a chart for a second. Mm-hmm. This is Robyn's chart. She was so gracious in letting us look at her chart today. So we get to have a good look at her life from the astrological perspective. So these...
Now wait on, we can't see it. All we can see is the last one, Traysi. So you're going...
okay, I think I have to unshare and then reshare. Okay, a second.
Yeah.
I'll stop and then share screen. There we go. There. Can you see that?
Yeah, there we go. That's my chart.
Okay, wonderful. So this is, there's different ways that they, different types of charts that you can have in Vedic astrology. This is the type that I have been using all these years. And the houses are represented by these triangles and rectangular shapes. This is the first house, second house, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, oops. 11th and 12th house. This is always the first house, always the second house, etc. Now, why then do we have numbers in them? That's confusing. Wouldn't you say that that's the 8th house? These represent the signs. So it's the 8th sign in the first house. The 8th sign is Scorpio. So you have Scorpio in your first house. And this AS is referring to the ascendant, which is the rising sign. The rising sign is the sign that's in the first house. It's always in the first house of our chart. The rising sign is the constellation that was rising up on the horizon line when you were first born. And why that's important is that that energy goes into your whole chart and really colors your whole chart. Your basic personality will be that, because the first house represents our personality and our body. So this rising sign really has a big influence on what our personality will be like. So you have a Scorpion personality. Scorpio is passionate and intense and powerful and has strong conviction for things and great focus to get things done and can be very successful in what they do, Scorpions. So that's a wonderful thing. It's a powerful, passionate thing to have for your first house and your personality. So that colors your whole chart. And so then after that, then the signs just go in order after that. So your 8th sign is in the first house, the 9th sign then is in the second house, 10th sign in the third house, etc. Yeah. And then it starts again at the first sign. So whatever is your rising sign really puts what the order of signs and where the signs are going to be in the houses. So when we look at a chart, we're looking at the houses, what each of the houses mean, what is the flavor of the sign that is in each house. So the flavor of Scorpio in your first house is giving you that passion, as that colors your thing. And then the sign in the second house will color the second house in that way. So we're looking at how the signs in the houses kind of influence each other. And then on top of that, we look at the planets and where they're positioned and how the flavor of the planets then influence that as well. For example, this is one of your best parts of your chart, Robyn. Robyn has Jupiter. Jupiter is this beautiful planet. It's my favorite planet. It's the planet of profound spirituality. It's higher wisdom, higher knowledge. It's a teacher and it's a student. And what is Robyn? All those things. Incredibly spiritual, wise in spiritual wisdom, and is a great teacher of it. You have that in your 7th house. This is the house of marriage. It's the house of partnership, business partnership. And you also have to learn in astrology what certain placements of planets mean. There's going to be things that aren't obvious that you can find out about. For example, Jupiter in this house means that you will have the tendency to teach and reach out to a lot of people. And this is the same placement of Jupiter in our friend Deborah Poneman's house, and she is a great teacher. She teaches thousands of women all over the world. So, and also Marcy Shimoff has this same placement, and she's another great teacher, spiritual teacher that teaches thousands of women. So this is an indication that you're going to be a teacher to lots of people around the world. And look what you're doing. Teaching lots of people around. And so that is that influence of that planet in this house. And actually this house, the first house, is our personal house, is very personal and intimate, ourselves. The opposite house is the other. So it is the other in partnership, but it's also the other in people in general. So that's why the Jupiter in the house of other, you're interested in teaching others. So we look at those different elements and how they come together. So we're looking at that house, we're looking at the planet, and then in this house, we look at, this is Taurus. The second sign is Taurus. Taurus is a sign of, it likes the home. It likes to create a beautiful home, a beautiful environment. And you created a beautiful environment, I understand, with your beautiful Ayurvedic clinic. You like to create a beautiful environment for others as well as for yourself. You built a beautiful Stapachavedic home, right? So it's home is very important, and bringing that higher wisdom into those elements of home. So you see how you can put the things together?
Yeah.
So
I love that, Traysi. That's really good. Yeah, really great.
I'm going to go back to the slides because I think I want to.
I think so.
I want to make it clear what I'm saying.
Yes.
There's a lot of different elements, to astrology, but once you get used to it and you learn them, then it becomes easier. But at first it's like, oh my gosh, so many different things to learn about. But eventually it does come more clear. Okay, so next we're going to look at the signs. So the signs are actually, as we were saying, they're actual stars in the sky that you can see in the sky. And so we talked about the rising sign being in the first house. And okay, so we're going to look at the different signs. So in Australia, you guys have Western astrology, do you, with Aries, Taurus, and Gemini for the sun sign?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think in Western astrology, they focus on the sun sign, where the sun is placed and what sign the sun is placed in our chart. There's a lot of emphasis on that. In Vedic astrology, we focus on where all the planets are. There's 9 different planets, and we focus on all the 9 influences of it. So it's not just the sun, because we have many different elements to us. And so we want to see the whole part of ourselves, a holistic view of ourselves. So I'll just go over a couple of these. You guys probably know most of these, but Aries is like a pioneer. They're also childlike, and they can act before they think. The Taurus, again, is like home, art, and luxuries. They can be stubborn. Gemini are the twins. They're multitaskers. They can be witty. They can be 2 different personalities, and they easily change their mind. That's the idea of these. We'll give a flavor of those. And now we'll go on to the planets, and then I'm going to use some of those examples to, like, let's try reading a chart together. Okay?
Right.
I don't want to fill your head with too many details. Okay. So then there are 9 planets altogether, but only 7 of them are actual planets that we use in Vedic astrology. 2 of them are nodes of the moon. Now, what the heck is that? Well, a node of the moon is not an actual planet. They're points in the sky where when the sun is on one and the moon is on the other, it creates an eclipse. So they're the eclipse points in the sky. And somehow, thousands of years ago, these great Vedic astrologers looked at those points in the sky and said, oh, that one represents this in my chart and this one represents the other. I don't know how they figured that out, but they did, and they saw that they did have an influence in our chart. And so we use these points as well when we look at someone's chart, and they're called Rahu and Ketu. Those are the 2 nodes of the moon. And each of the planets have different strengths as well. That's another thing we look at. So we look at it, is it debilitated? Is it in its own sign? Is it exalted? So there's many different aspects of that as well. That's something we'll get into a little at another time. And the planets tell us a lot of details about ourselves. So that's what I really look at the chart for. I look at the planet, the placement of the planet, because that really shows us the most details, I find. And as what I was saying before, we look at all the planets in the chart, not just the sun sign. So the different planets are the sun, which represents our soul. On the deeper level, the soul. On the surface level, the ego. So it's our self-confidence. It's where we're soul connected. The moon represents the mind, and it's the emotional and the intuitive mind. And it's where we put our attention on in our life, which is really fascinating to see where people's moons are. And you ask them, what do you think about when you first wake up in the morning? And boom, it's always whatever house that moon is in. It's really powerful. And the moon, you can have a new moon, you can have a full moon. That really affects how calm our mind is and how clear our mind is. So we look at that. We look at the size of the moon. Jupiter is my favorite planet. Once again, it's the most spiritual planet. I love it. It's very expanded in its energy. It's a teacher, it's a student, it's higher knowledge. And it, depending on its placement, can show whether a person is very spiritual or not necessarily spiritual in their life, in this lifetime. Saturn is another one of the spiritual planets. It's all about silence, deep, profound silence, and it's inner connection, inner reflection. It's thinking of a monk in a cave. That's Saturn, monk in a cave, really ascetic and really still. And if we don't have enough silence in our life, Saturn becomes the disciplinarian in our life. It slaps us down. It creates grief and difficulty, and it's what gives us our lessons and our challenges in our life, this Saturn. So having a background in meditation, I always, when I do a chart, I tell people, if you want to make friends with Saturn, meditate. Go to the silent part of Saturn, and you will befriend Saturn, because you don't want to have Saturn get on your case and give you difficulty and grief. If you are experiencing that grief and difficulty in your life, then the way to do it is to transcend it. Don't try to fight Saturn. Transcend Saturn by going to that silence and finding a solution in that silence, coming back out from that silence and working with Saturn from silence. So Saturn is a powerful, powerful planet. The more we understand it in our life, the more we can have a smooth experience in life. Venus is a beautiful planet. It is where we're heart connected in life. It is love, it is passion, it's beauty, it's relationships, it's how artistic you are, and it represents women. Mercury is the other planet that represents our mind, but it's our intellect. It's how we learn. It's our intelligence, it's our communication, and it's writing and speaking, and it's very changeable. Mercury is very movable. Then there's Mars. Mars is life force, life energy. It's the warrior planet. It's fiery, it's passionate, conviction. It has the energy to get things done, and it's also a good leadership. And it can also be fiery and impatient and anger. So too much Mars can create, every aspect of your chart can have a positive or negative side. And so you kind of look at both sides of it and say, you'll have a tendency for this, but then you'll always also have a tendency for that. And so then it's really creating a balance in our own lives. I can be passionate without the anger. You know, how do we balance that line? And that's that pitta element in Ayurveda, right? That fiery element. How do you balance? And every planet does have the elements as well. Rahu is a node of the moon, and it's all about our desires or cravings. And it also creates ups and downs in our life. Wherever it is in our chart, it's going to create ups and downs in that part of our chart. It's the trickster. It tries to trick us, push us off our path. So it is testing us, how solid are we on what we're doing and why we're here. Ketu is the other node of the moon that's otherworldly. It's beyond this world, and it's more about intuition, and it's also wherever it is in our chart, that part of us tends to be hidden and invisible. People don't notice that part of ourselves. So those are all the planets. So now they come together, and we saw a chart on how they look together, but let's try it together. Let's just give an example of, okay, how do we put these all together? Okay, so let's say the first house represents our personality and our body. If someone has Venus in the first house, they will have the qualities of Venus in their personality and their body. So the qualities of Venus are beauty and love and heartfulness. So that's what you will find in the person. They will have qualities to be beautiful, artistic, heartful, feminine. When it's in the first house, right? So that's how you put them together. Personality and body, these are the qualities. Those will be the qualities that'll be in their body and their personality. That's how it works. So then you bring in the sign. There's 12 houses and 12 signs. So there's always going to be a sign in each house. There's not always a planet, but there's always a sign. So I'll talk about what we do when there's not a planet. So then we look at the sign. So let's say Aries is in their first house. Aries is the sign of being pioneering and childlike. So how do you think that would influence a person's behavior? Robyn, what do you think? Since everyone's muted, I'll ask you.
I was going to ask them to put it in the chat box.
Well, that's true.
And take the pressure off me. So if they're, what was it? Sorry, I was thinking about asking the next question.
So Aries is all about pioneering, being first, being, starting something new, and being childlike, and that's in their first house.
Yeah.
So
they're going to be inquisitive, and they're going to be open, to finding new ways of doing things.
Yes. And then you put that together with the Venus in the first house. So what would that be like?
Well,
so
maybe they could. Yep. They could take that into any elements of the Venus, couldn't they? So, they could take it into, into looking into the beauty, or looking into the feminine, or looking into, or looking into it in a way that is feminine, in the feminine way, or in a beautiful way, or.
Yes. Good. Very good. Very good. And it becomes intuitive how you put all the pieces of the puzzle together. And everybody does it differently. So the two different people looking at the same chart will interpret it differently, because they'll be looking at it from a slightly different perspective. So there's many different ways you can read a chart. I find that over the years, it has changed for me as well. And it becomes more and more intuitive over time.
Even Traysi, with I would imagine you bring parts of yourself to your reading.
Yes.
And as with Ayurvedic practitioner, so when you're doing that, you are also bringing part of yourself to that. It's your own awareness and your own level of balance, that's going to open up.
And I think your own interest as well, because as we were discussing earlier, that you're interested in the soul perspective of things. You see Ayurveda from the soul perspective. I see astrology from the soul perspective, because I find that much more interesting to see it. Let's look at it and help us to understand ourselves from that soul level. And rather than on the surface, anybody can say, okay, your personality is going to be like this, and you're going to do this and this. But to me, it's much broader than that. What did our soul come to do? Why did we choose these personalities? What can the personalities actually help us to do in this lifetime? It's like we can really expand on that soul perspective. So so that ended up being the way that I ended up reading charts. So let's see.
Yeah.
So that one's that one. All right. Let's do a quick quiz for everyone.
Okay.
Do you want to do a little quiz, or were you going to say something?
I was going to say we'll open up for questions, but let's do the quiz and then we'll open up for questions.
Okay, so if someone has Venus, which we know now as beauty and artisticness, in their 10th house of career, how do you think that would affect their career? What do you think what kind of effect would that have in their career?
Okay, we can pop that in the chat box, see how you go with this quiz. How many questions in the quiz? Just one?
I think this was I was just going to test and see.
Okay, so we've got a model, an artist.
Good.
A beautician. Creative.
Nice.
Starving artist. A model, an artist, a hairdresser, arts and creative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it could also be working with women.
Yeah, absolutely, working with women for sure.
Yes. But yes, you guys have gotten the idea. That's it. Exactly. So you take the different elements and you put them together, and you kind of, wow, that feels like, Venus in a career, what would that feel like? And those are all the things. That's how you do it. And so, and then you just go around the chart and you do that with all the different houses and all the different planets, and then you have a chart. You read your chart.
You make it sound so easy. Yeah, women's shelter, someone put in there. So yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So it would depend too, on the other things, like where's their spirituality.
Right. Look at the other parts of the chart. Now, the woman's shelter, maybe they would be someone that would be wanting to work in that way, So that would be showing up in another area of the chart. Or if it's a model, they'll have a different part. They'll have an influence on the body and the face in the first house as well. So it's you look at all the different things in the chart, put it together.
Beautiful, very good. There you go. Sue's just said Tracy's explanation is so lovely. It's so good. I love. That's why I brought. That's why I asked if she would come, because she Traysi, you just explained things so beautifully. And it's really easy to understand it, but I'm actually really loving going through the houses. And I think for everybody, if you do choose to have a chart done, and there's certainly no pressure at all to do that, is there, Traysi? Like, no pressure?
Oh, no, not at all. No.
No pressure. So, but if you do, to have this, I didn't have this understanding before I had my first chart done. So you spend a lot of time trying to figure out actually what it's all about. So to have this first up is really, really great. Okay, so Traysi, what do you think if we open up for questions?
Yes, certainly.
Okay, so who would like to ask a question? Just either wave your hand and I'll unmute you. Tony, that was you? Yes? Okay.
Okay, will it still work if you don't know your exact time of birth?
Ooh, such a good question.
That's such a good question. And it does make it more difficult to get the precision of the reading. But you can get a general overview, but I'll tell you the difference that it makes. It makes a difference as you can't tell what the rising sign is. So you can't tell where the signs are in what houses. So therefore, because the rising sign switches about every hour. So if the chart is off by an hour, it'll be a different rising sign, which will give the different flavor to the whole chart. So that's why it's harder to give a more accurate reading. But what doesn't change is the planets in the different houses. No, I'm sorry. The planets in the different signs don't change. So you can still do a reading with what planets are going to be in what sign. But where they are in the different houses, that shifts. So yes, it does make a difference. And what you can do, what I've learned to do is get an estimation of the time, and then you look at the chart and then you ask questions. Is this working for you? Is this, oh no, that doesn't sound like me. Okay, then you try a different time. And then how about this? Is this working for you? Yes, that sounds more like me. Okay, then you go with that chart. So you ask questions until it starts sounding like the person, and then you kind of go with that chart. So that's what you can do.
And that's what Traysi actually did with me, because I didn't have my exact birth date time. I have a date. Yeah. I didn't have the time. So
and then you did find it, so it worked quite well for you, eh?
Yeah. So yeah, thank you, Tony. That's such a good question. Kim, did you have a question? Did I see you raise your hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kim.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I quite recently had an astrology reading.
Yes.
And but it wasn't Jyotish, and so
Western.
However, I don't really understand the intricacies of it all, and so all of what you talked about was familiar with the houses and the planets, and the thing that I know that I didn't. It's my family, sorry. Was the stars. The stars is the piece that wasn't talked about in that reading. So I suppose coming into today, I was just trying to get an understanding of what I would find in this reading that gave me more, or something different to that reading.
That's a very good question, because Western astrology is quite different than Eastern or Jyotish astrology or Vedic astrology. It's different in that the mathematics that each of the systems uses to figure out where the stars and planets are in the sky is different. So the mathematics are different, and the mathematics system that is used for Western astrology was created around 2,000 years ago, and it has not kept up with the changing positions of stars and planets in the sky over 2,000 years. And every 72 years, the stars in the sky shift by 1 degree in the sky from our perspective. As we're looking at the stars from the Earth's perspective, it shifts by 1 degree. So over 2,000 years, it's off by 23 degrees. So therefore, when you do a Western chart, it's not at the moment of your birth in a Western chart, it doesn't reflect the exact thing that was going on in the sky at that moment, a Western chart. It is off by 23 degrees, your chart. So therefore, it is not as accurate. It is not as precise. Whereas Vedic astrology precisely is what was in the sky when you were born. So Western astrology has learned to adjust by being more general and being, it just has adjusted over time. But
and not having that
different.
Not having that uniqueness, like as we do in Ayurveda, and we know that everybody is completely unique. It's the same thing in Jyotish, isn't it? Like everybody's chart is completely unique.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's much more precise.
So it's possibly just more accurate, would you say, Traysi?
Very much more accurate. And an interesting thing that I've found after doing many charts is that a lot of people that grew up thinking that their sun sign was this thing in Western astrology. For example, I grew up thinking my sun sign was Aries, but when I did my Vedic astrology chart, I saw that my sun actually at the time of my birth accurately was in Pisces. So I'm actually a sun in Pisces, not a sun in Aries. But I grew up thinking I was sun in Aries, and I did so many charts where people had to come to terms with the fact that actually their sun was different than they grew up with. And so that's how, when it's off by 23 degrees, it actually can shift what your sun sign is.
Right. Did that answer your question, Kim? Yes, good. Okay. Now, Karen, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Hi there. I'm sorry I was a bit late. I ran into a friend's new baby as I was walking home. It was so exciting.
Lovely.
That's wonderful.
My question is about hemispheres and how this takes into account differences between northern and southern hemisphere. I'm not very au fait with the stars and the moon, but I have a general sense that they are different between your hemisphere and our hemisphere. Is that?
Well, that's a very good question. And because, yes, we're talking from different sides of the world, it must be affecting, the stars and the charts in some way. And yes, what we do is when we're doing a chart, we put in where the person was born. So the place does make a difference. So we put in the date, the place, and the time of someone's birth to get their specific chart. So yes, it does make a difference. If you did the same chart on the same date and time, but a different place, it would be a slightly different chart. That's why everybody's chart is unique, because even people born at exactly the same time, it'll be a different place. And so it'll be a different chart. So yes.
Right.
Can you hear you?
Sorry.
There you are.
So does that mean that sun signs are affected by that too? I'm showing my great ignorance here.
Yes, they would be affected by that. Probably. I think a lot of different parts of the chart would be affected by that. And yeah, a lot of things would be affected by that.
Everything is affected by it. I mean, it's really about where it's you being born at that time and where everything is. So
yes.
Yeah, it's going to be completely different. Like if you think about now, and you're 6 o'clock on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And where this time on. Yeah. So,
you're tomorrow for me.
Yeah, tomorrow. Yeah.
You guys are all ahead of me. Way ahead of me.
Yeah, it's so weird. Now, who waved their hand? Jackie, was it you? Yes. Okay. There you go.
Hi, I was just wondering, like with lots of medical intervention now and people having elective cesareans on a date that they're not meant to be born on, or people that are premature babies or babies overdue, is it the date that they would have been born naturally, or is it the date that they actually hit the ground running?
Such a good question.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
Because my son was born by cesarean and I had that same question. And I was like, well, does that make a difference? What I heard from Jyotishis is that it's when they're born, whatever means they're born, it's when they're born. It's when they take their first breath in this world. So it can be cesarean, it can be a natural birth, whatever it is, it was meant to be. Whatever way it happened, it was meant to be. It's probably in their chart that they were born that way. So it's meant to be, and that's what it is. Yeah.
That's great. Sue was going to ask a similar question, she said. Yeah, very good. Okay, are there any more questions? We're getting close to the top of the hour here. Any more questions for Traysi while we've got her here? No one waving at me. All right. Did you find that really interesting and useful? Yeah. 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 Oh, Marie's got a question. Thank you, Marie. Yes.
Just a quick one. We have a chart, our chart read by you. Do we do it through Zoom? Do you do it through Skype? How do you do that?
I do Zoom sessions just like this. So then we can see each other. I can put your chart up. You can see it and that kind of thing. And so yes. And I'm also, I've stepped away from doing a lot of charts in this last year and started more teaching. So I am going to be teaching a class for astrology coming up. I think it's next Friday. I'll be starting this. Robyn sort of suggested this for me, and I thought, yes, that's a great idea. I should do an introduction to astrology reading. So it's starting next Friday. It's going to be in this format, Zoom, and it'll be this time as well, because this works for Australia, and it also works for people where I am too. And it's going to be 3 weeks, an hour and a half per session. It's going to be an introduction on how you can really start reading your own chart and really get used to that. So that's that class coming up if you're interested. So you can ask Robyn about details about that if you're interested.
Yeah. So that'll come out in tomorrow's newsletter. So Sunday's newsletter. I'm just thinking, I've scheduled a cooking class on the second one of those.
Oh, did you? We could adjust the time if you would like to do that.
Well, I'm thinking we could do, it'd be a whole day though if you're going to do it, but we could do the cooking in the afternoon instead of in the morning. Anyway, we'll have a talk about that.
We'll talk about that, yes.
Yeah, it's good. So now, the other thing that Traysi's done is she has offered you a discount to have your chart done if you'd like to have your chart done. And she's brought that back to 70 US, isn't it? So it's around 108 Australian. So normally she charges 108 US, which is still really, really reasonable. Like, it's so reasonable. And, you know, because Traysi is so passionate about this, you know, and she has that, you know, the great love and the soul fulfillment of helping us find our way, find our path, and what our, you know, what we're here for. So I did send that link out on your yesterday's email that you could do that. I'll pop it on the Facebook page as well. So if you did want to do that, she'd be happy to do that. And also, I think the course that she's going to offer will be amazing. So Sue's just asked, so if we want to have our chart done, should we organise that now? Well, they can just, do we get the chart with notes, please, is the next question. So they can record it, can't they, the chart?
Get recorded, yes, and I can send the recording. And all you do is, Robyn, I think you already sent out the link.
I did send out the link, yeah.
The link to register, and you just go to the page and you fill in the information, and you can do the whole thing on the page. I will get then the notice of the time that you want, and then I will contact you back, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, everybody? Yeah. Sarah, yes. Sue, yes. Great. Wow. So just another door opening for everybody, just this little bit of extra information. And as I've said in the very first week of Ayurveda, there is nothing that doesn't come under this umbrella. It is the knowledge of living, you know, so there's everything comes under it. And there's so many tools that we've been gifted to help us to, you know, live our fullest life, You know, we've been given all of these tools, and all of the ancients in their wisdoms, particularly through this Vedic lineage, brought down this information, and it's just been passed down so carefully. Wouldn't you say, Traysi? Like, so carefully, with so much sacredness, to keep it all intact and to keep the integrity. So yeah, here we are, this many, how many thousand years we don't even know down the track, and we're still benefiting because we're still all journeying to the same place, really, to that soul awareness.
So thorough as well. I mean, Ayurveda covers so many subjects, and then Jyotish gives us such a broad perspective. It's just so thorough from this Vedic perspective. So it's a gift that was handed down to us.
Very good. Well, thank you, Traysi, very, very much. I'll just open up the lines now so everybody can say thank you. So I'll just unmute everyone so we can all say thank you very much. So everybody.